Okay, welcome to the exam prep. I'm going to go over what's going to be on the exam and also sort of the format of the exam. So first thing, the exam is going to be for the online section. It's going to be this Friday. Let me double check the dates. Friday the 15th or Saturday the 16th. Now, because this is an online course and you have a little bit of flexibility when to take it, you can take it any time during those 2 days. The test itself will be 50 minutes. It'll be done through the Respondus lockdown browser, which will be on D2L. Most of you have experience with that. You will basically, what will happen is that you'll go in, activate it. You'll have to show your ID, a picture ID, and it'll ask you to use your camera to show your surroundings, that you don't have a bunch of notes sitting there on the table, etc., etc. Now, once you do that, like I said, you have 50 minutes to take the test. It will be 30 questions. Now, the questions will be divided up into three different sections. There are going to be 14 questions that are C level, 8 questions that are B level, 8 questions that are A level. And the points they won't be all worth the same amount. C level questions will be worth 5 points. B levels will be worth 3 points. A levels will be 1. So there's actually a little bit more than 100 points. So this is 70, 24, and 8. So that would be 102 points. So there's 2 bonus points. 100 points is 100% on the exam. So there's an extra 2 points. So what are these A, B, and C levels? Well, it has been my experience that people tend to get sort of test anxiety with accounting and may not know what questions to focus on. And the purpose of an intro level course like Accounting 210 is just to make sure that students come away at it with a minimum of a basic understanding of accounting. So rather than make all the hard questions and all the easy questions sort of the same value, what I'm basically doing is I'm making the easy questions 5 points, because I just want you to be able to, at a minimum, I want you to demonstrate that you understand what's going on. And then for those of you who are accounting majors or finance majors or just want to do well in accounting, the harder level questions will be progressively fewer and fewer points, so that in order to get a high A, you have to do a lot of work. But in order to get a C, that's why it's called a C level question, you just have to make sure you know the basic information. And so that should reduce your anxiety, because you will know that as long as you get those C level questions correct, then you'll get the most points on the exam. Now, where are the C level questions coming from? As you know, you'll notice that there is a quiz up. The quiz right now is due by the time you take the test, so I think it's due the 16th. The quiz is 50 questions, and they are all the C-level questions. So in other words, you can take the quiz and you can take it as many times as you want, and your grade will be the highest score you get. And this will be your best way to practice to make sure you pass the test. In other words, I'm giving you all the C questions. So if there's 50 of them, I will select 14 of them to be on the exam. So you can go through and practice and make sure you have down cold all the C level questions, sort of guaranteeing you that you pass. And then the progressively harder questions you can attempt, but you're maybe less worried because you've already gotten the passing grade, and then anything else is kind of an additional benefit to you. So that's sort of the purpose of it. So the B level will be a little bit harder, and the A level will be, of course, even that much harder. So all the C level questions are in the quiz. You can take the quiz as many times as you want to practice. And then here on the document that I have here, which I'm going to post on D2L, is an example of all the B-level questions. So let's take a look at some of these things going on here. When I'm looking at the document over here on the side, you'll see I've kind of broken them up in the type of questions. That's the italics. So basic level questions, the C1, the basic knowledge questions, those are all found on the quiz. Now there's about 40 knowledge questions and about 10 journal entry questions. So I didn't list all the 40 knowledge questions. You can see those by taking the quiz over as many times as you want. And here are the basic journal entries. So these will be exactly as they are on the quiz. In other words, I will select one or two of these basic journal entries and it won't be any change. Now the B and the A level questions, these are just examples. I may change them slightly, but it will be just, I changed the account. I won't be changing the wording of the question, or I'll be changing the account or the dollar amount. The point is that they're examples, but I don't want the phrasing of the question to get in the way. I don't want them to be kind of asked in wildly different ways. This document shows how the questions will be asked, even if they're not exactly the amounts. So basic journal entry questions, all I'm trying to get you to demonstrate for me here is that, for example, this first one, the journal entry for taking out a loan will let you know cash is an asset, and then asset is increased with a debit. Notes payable is a liability, and notes payable is a liability is increased with a credit. So you'll be able to see that. Here we've got journal entry for taking out a loan, paying back a loan, buying inventory with cash, buying inventory on account, and then paying back the accounts payable. The basic adjusting entries, they're a little bit more complex, but remember in chapter 3, this is what we went over. So I have one each of the 4 different types. And remember, the 4 different types are going to be, if we have revenues and expenses and we have cash, the cash happens before or the cash happens after, meaning we receive the cash and then later we record the revenue, or we pay the cash and later we record the expense, or we record the revenue and later on receive the cash, or we record the expense and later on pay the cash. So this would be unearned revenue. This would be prepaid. This would be some sort of accrued revenue like AR, sort of like AR. And this would be an accrued expense, sort of like AP. So all I'm with the 4 questions here are the basic adjusting entries, is I'm giving you one each, right? And these will be exactly how they're worded. So here's a prepaid, here's an unearned revenue, here is an accrued expense, and here's an accrued revenue. So they are a little bit more wordy, and you may wonder why it's a basic level question. Well, you need to at least be able to identify each of those: unearned revenue, prepaid, accrued revenue, and accrued expense. On to the B-level questions, you'll notice that the categories, there's the intermediate accounting equation, intermediate journal entry. So the accounting equation is just being able to look at some statement and then be able to identify, if you remember, this is what we did early on, is it an increase to assets, increase to owner's equity? Now, these aren't necessarily very difficult, they're intermediate, but they may deal with things that they're not sort of the basic level information. So like a revenue or purchasing equipment, et cetera, et cetera. Intermediate journal entries, well, again, we have some basic journal entries over here, and the intermediate journal entries are, I'm just adding some dollar amounts. Sometimes that throws people off, or I'm using accounts that we don't use that often, but that you would still have to know, sort of like owner's drawing or supplies or a salary expense, that sort of things. So it's not that necessarily that they're that much difficult than the basic. It's just there's an additional, whether it's not as rare, it's not as common, or the dollar amount, you would just still have to be able to recognize it, or at least recognize it enough to guess from the multiple choice. And I will mention that this is all multiple choice. There are a couple of true false questions. Intermediate financial statement equation. All this is testing you here is that you know the financial statement. For example, this one would be the income statement, which is revenue minus expenses equals net income, and I'm giving you just the basic information. So this first one here, we show it as service revenue minus wage expense minus another expense. Well, you can see that's going to be a net income of 50. So this was the unknown. If I kind of fast forward here and I look at the advanced thing, we have advanced financial statement equations. Well, it's still, for example, this first one's going to be relatively the same. It's still the net income, or it's still the income statement, but perhaps I'm asking you something that's unusual. So rather than asking you the normal format here, you notice here in this second one, we're asking, okay, here's the wage expense, here's the rent expense, here's the net income, and now the unknown is the revenue. What is the revenue? So that's more of an advanced question because you still have to know the income statement, but maybe it's asking you in a slightly different way that's not familiar. So it's still an algebra equation. So it's just x minus 200 minus 250 equals 50. And so x, or revenue, is going to be 500 here. So that's kind of an example between a base or an intermediate question and an advanced question. Sometimes it's still the same information. It's just presented in a slightly different format, which would require you to be comfortable, confident, and know how it all works together. Let's continue on with us going back to the intermediate question. So intermediate T account, this is a relatively simple account. You have a cash account. You just have to know how to enter or how to picture the debits and credits. So you notice there's a debit here of $1,000. There's a credit here of 200. So therefore the balance is going to be 800. Now you notice it's an $800 debit. So one of the multiple choice questions could be, there was, 4 answers. Maybe one of them says $800 debit and the other one says $800 credit. Well, it's not an $800 credit, right? That would be on this other side, which is incorrect. It's an $800 debit. Immediate adjusting entries, again, these are ones that you would have seen in the homework, and they're just maybe slightly more complicated, but not unduly so. Like I said, you would have already seen these mostly in the homework. So here we've got a company purchased $1,000 of supplies. So let's say I have a T account here of supplies. And it says we went in at the end of the month and we counted what was, or at the end of the year, we counted what was on hand. Well, the on hand is the new balance. So what we're asking here is, well, how much did we use up? Well, so you'd have to know enough to figure that out, that what we used up was 300. We had to have a credit. We had to have a credit to the supplies of 300, and that credit was an expense. Here we have some immediate accruals, intermediate accruals and deferrals. Now, this goes back to this chart here. This chart here that you should have in your mind, in that there's only 4 possibilities, right? There's only 4 accounts. And what you need to do, and we did a little bit of practice of this in one of the last videos, but we also had a homework question, is what you want to do is for every one of these types of accruals and deferrals, you want to say, does it have to deal with revenue or does it have to deal with expense? That's the first question. And then, did the cash happen right now, or is the cash going to happen later? And that would tell you which of these 4 accounts. So I'll just look at this one right here. Company collects $1,300 from a customer. Okay, well, that's the cash happening right now. So it's one of these 2. And then we want to ask ourselves, is it a revenue or an expense? Well, we're collecting from a customer for services performed. That means we're earning revenue. So that's why the cash happened first, and it's a revenue. Therefore, this particular type of accrual or deferral is called unearned revenue. Okay, let's finish up with these advanced type equation questions. And once again, these will be only worth 1 point. So I would do the C level first, because those are the most points, then the B level, and then finish up with the A level. Even if you don't finish in time, you'll know that they are A, more difficult, and B, they're only worth 1 point. So if you don't finish quite in time, that's okay. They're meant to be sort of a challenge to make sure, that you can for those who really want to study hard and get a good grade. But if you are looking for just a B, well, then just make sure you do well on the C and the B level questions, and maybe attempt a couple of the A questions. So advanced journal entries, again, we're ramping up the difficulty of the journal entries. Here we've got a three-part journal entry. This journal entry is both the sale and the expense, the sale part and the inventory part. Here's some advice. Well, we talked about these a little earlier. It's the same financial statement equations. This one is on the income statement. This one's on the statement of owner's equity. And just remember, the statement of owner's equity is beginning capital plus net income minus drawings equals ending capital. So that's the basic one there. This is a balance sheet equation. You need to know which of these are assets. Well, these two are assets. These two are liabilities. And so you need to be able to plug it into the equation here and know that, okay, if we're looking for owner's equity, what is the algebra equation that gets us there? Here's an advanced T account. The previous T account just had 2 entries. Here we've got 6 entries, and you just have to make sure that you understand. Just look at the debits and credits and cash, right? Don't worry. Part of the thing that makes this advance is this one says make a sale, but it's a cash sale. This one's make a sale, but it's a sale on account. So don't add both of the sales, right? Only add the cash sale to the cash account. Here is another one. This is asking you about another T account. What it's basically saying is that if we had a prepaid insurance, well, we originally paid $1,200 into the prepaid, and then every month, so that would be, say, January 1st, every month we use up some of it. We use up 100 of it, 1/12, 1 month of it. So on the end of January, we use up 100. On the end of February, we use up 100. On the end of March, we use 100. So at the end of March, or it's asking the beginning of April, right? April 1st, how much is in this account? Well, we've used up 3 months. So how much is left in the account? 900 is left in the account. This last one, advanced accounting cycle. We don't have any other accounting cycle questions. This is asking you what's the order of the trial balance. So you're given a bunch of these. I may have to reword this question because this is designed to be a in-class question to where they actually write it out. But the trial balance is always listed in order of assets, liabilities, and equity, and drawings, and revenues, and expenses. So I might ask a question of I might list 2 things, and I might say which comes first in the trial balance. So I might say we have cash and we have expenses. Which comes first, the cash or the expenses? And you'd have to know cash is an asset, therefore it would come first in the trial balance. Okay, I don't want to make this prep too long. I will post this document so that you can use it to practice. You also have the quiz, which allows you to practice on the C-level questions. And between those, you should be good to go, or at least give it a go. And I wish you the best of luck. Remember, it's Friday or Saturday that you need to take the exam. All right, any questions, let me know. Thank you.